Hey, my name is Bree. Today I'm going to be modeling in Rhino 6. This video isn't really like a how-to, it's more like a hang out with me while I'm modeling. But I will be making two objects. The first one is going to be something that I'm designing so it can help me while I'm making my smoke cleansing bundles. And the second one is going to be a stamp with my logo on it so that when I send out Etsy orders, I can stamp the packages with it. This first one is going to be that holder that I mentioned first. I sped this part up because I definitely did it wrong the first time. I've not used Rhino for a little bit, so I'm a little bit rusty. There's always different ways to do what you want to do in Rhino, and sometimes you do it the wrong way first, but you just have to be able to problem solve and make sure that you get it done eventually. So for this one, I'm just doing a basic rectangle shape, making sure that it's solid, and then I'm going to Boolean difference this cylinder from it so that it gets like a half pipe look to it. I really wanted to make it so that I could have like 4 of them together, but that could not happen. It's too big for my 3D printer. So instead I'm just going to be doing 2 wide, and then I can just print more than one if I want to and then just glue it together, but 2 should be good. I also decided to go ahead and put my Instagram handle on there so that if I ever make a video about it, my Instagram is on there, people can check it out. I also think it's kind of cool to like put text on these types of things, especially when you use a Boolean difference so that it's inset into it. I think that looks so good all the time. But yeah, we're gonna kind of just chill while I go through this, and yeah. This is the moment, if you watch closely where my mouse is, you can tell I'm trying to count how many centimeters it is to see if it's gonna fit on the bed, and it did not. I also thought I was gonna put just like a flat bottom to it. Decided not to do that because why would you do that if you can just join them together? That's just kind of stupid. So I ended up just taking that whole surface off and just leaving it as it was, and I just joined them together. You might notice that I'm trying to get this to line up perfectly with the outer edge. It's always good if you're modeling like this to have some overhang so that it has something to kind of mesh into itself. So here, the overhang is definitely messed up. I don't have the thickness correct, and so I need to go in and make those a lot thinner so that the overhang is not as aggressive. And then that way there's less chance of it, breaking off if that were to happen. And since in the end I ended up just using a Boolean difference to subtract that out, that overhang is also what's going to give me that kind of set in look to the text. I forgot to mention that I have gumball turned on, so these arrows and like it looks like shortcuts almost that I'm using, if you turn gumball on, that'll make it so much faster to be able to model everything. So now that this is done, I'm going to save this as an STL file, and then I'm going to go ahead and import this into Cura. This will let me get this ready for the actual 3D printer, and then I can save the G-code from Cura and put that onto a thumb drive and print this out on my printer. So moving on to the stamp, I'm gonna go ahead and just make like a general shape that I want to see for the side of the stamp, and then I'm just gonna use revolve. You can tell the first time I did it, really messed up. I chose the wrong axis for it to revolve around, and it just looked like a really work up. But when you do this correctly, it can be a really efficient tool to get a round object to be exactly how you want it, in terms of what the profile looks like. So this is going to be the basic handle shape. This will make it comfortable to grab and easy to like press down. If you make a stamp and you put sharp edges on it, it can make it really annoying to use constantly, and putting pressure on it, you could, you know, leave marks in your hands, or if you don't clean up your print, you could end up cutting yourself on the stubs. Not good, would not recommend that. So what I would recommend here is making it as smooth as possible and think about how it's going to actually fit in your hand. Making it actually fit in your hand, especially if you add like where your fingers go, little grooves, that can be really comfortable, make it really easy to use, especially if you are, you know, making these to sell or whatever. This one's just going to be for me, so this one I don't really care about. I'm just going to make sure that it will be not painful to use and fairly comfortable and will fit in my hand. It's also really important to look at your project from the perspective tab to make sure that you don't miss anything. Had I left that like that, it would have been extremely awkward to hold and it would have just looked so strange. So make sure that when you are making things, especially that are not like perfect squares or anything like that, that you're checking from perspective. Another thing to double check is that your shapes are solids. If you have one end open, you're just gonna be in a world of hurt. So just double check, every so often that your shapes that you want to be solids are actually solids, because it's kind of a pain if they aren't to make them into solids. This one, I'm lucky I caught it when I did, because I could just put the bottom onto it and then join them so that they were just one poly shape. Please double check. So you can't see what I'm doing here. It doesn't show the actual text box, what's going on when it opens, but I have the menu open for text object. I'm just typing in the logo that I want using the font and then changing the thickness so that the overhang won't be, massive. And then I'm gonna go ahead and just bring it down to where I can work with it, flip it around as much as I need to. This took a whole second. I had to think about how it was gonna be when it actually stamped, and my brain did not like thinking about that. So it took an extra minute to make sure that I had it correct. And if you're making a stamp, make sure that you take the extra time to ensure that this is, facing the correct way. Otherwise, you're gonna print it, you're gonna realize that it doesn't really work, and then it's gonna be just a waste of filament. So make sure that you're double checking everything as you go. So my initial idea for this logo had 2 branches of leaves on either side. If you have details like this, make sure that you are thinking about your printer's abilities for details. If you have a resin printer, those can handle prints really well. They can do a lot of small details, but filament printers, not as much. So it's really important that as you're designing things or as you're thinking things through, that you are keeping that in mind. This one shouldn't be too small, but at the same time, I definitely did not go about it right the first time. The one I ended up doing, I think looks really good. It's a lot more vague, but I think that's kind of nice. It looks almost like lavender or something, and I'm cool with that. Because I was having so much trouble getting this done, I took a picture of the logo drawing I did, and then I just used a background bitmap so that I could just trace it. That way I could get the actual shape that I wanted. And it won't be perfect, but that's totally okay. It's not a huge deal. You just have to be flexible with these kinds of things. One last thing I'm gonna recommend is if you're gonna have multiple things being extruded like on stamps, put all of them flat, select all of them, and extrude them all at the same time so that they're all the same height. That way you aren't having to go back in the end and be like, are these level? I can't quite tell. Just do yourself a favor, do all of them at once. I didn't really think about it when I did this video, but just, it'll save you so much time. I would just recommend doing them all at the same time. And then just like the other one, I'm going to save this as an STL. I'm going to import it to Cura so that I can prepare it for the actual printing. And then it'll be good. I'll have some of these babies probably next week. Make sure that after you pull the print off the bed that you sand down the bottom so that when you go to stamp things, it's nice and even, you don't have to rock it too much, and then it'll look really nice that way instead of being kind of splotchy. Let me know what you thought about this video. This is definitely not the typical video that I do, but I had a lot of fun doing it. I love using Rhino. It's always so cool to see what you can create. Leave a like if you did like this. I can always do more of these. And then subscribe if you'd like to see new content every Monday. I'll see you next week.